Hello and welcome to the channel. My name is Annalisa and this is going to be my November wrap-up. I'm doing this in two parts, so there will be a clothes change somewhere in the middle. Okay, let's get the physical books down first. Once Upon a Quinceanera. I've been wanting to read this for, I don't know, at least 6 months I think. But it is fairly new. I think it came out this year, but I saw it on a booktube channel that I will link below, and it was an Own Voices review for Latinx representation, and also from someone who had been to a family member's quinceanera and verified that there was lots of drama surrounding it, as there is lots of drama in this book. Lots of family drama, lots of teenage angst drama, dealing with jobs and trying to graduate from school, and going off to college drama, because the main character isn't actually having the quinceanera. She is going to be working her cousin's quinceanera. The main character is 18, the cousin is turning 16, so she's having a year late one. And the main character is a party princess, so she dresses up in belle costumes as she is on this cover, and she gets hired to do that at her cousin's quinceanera, which involves actually practicing the routines, because there's a whole dance routine for this quinceanera for an entire summer that she is working, and she has to do this specific job for complicated reasons that have to do with her graduating, and all of this is to force her into a really uncomfortable situation with her cousin, who she really doesn't like, and her aunt, the mother of that cousin, who she also really doesn't like, and who have treated her badly in the past. But her family is also hooked onto them, not only from blood relations, but because this is the rich part of the family, and if you want to do anything fun that takes money, like have a party or go on a cool vacation or anything like that, you have to make nice with these people. Which, dang, I've heard about from other people who are like, have to remain attached to their toxic family because the toxic people are rich and they are financially dependent on them, and dang, that sucks. A number of times I really wish that the 18-year-old would slap the 16-year-old or the 15-and-a-half-year-old, or at least, you know, toss a thing of water in her face, but she didn't. She was very controlled and mature. But yeah, there was a lot of infuriating moments, but also a lot of entertaining moments, and there's a lot of boy drama, because she and the cousin like the same boy, and it was really interesting and a lot of fun, and had some good, meaningful, heartfelt moments as well. I really recommend it. It's a big fat book. It's a chonker. It's over 400 pages, which is kind of a lot for what I would say women's fiction, YA women's fiction, which is a stupid name for a genre, but it's, you know, the life of a woman that's not really romance, even if there's romance involved. But it's all about relationships, and that's what that genre is called, because men have been taught not to care about relationships. I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna move on now. Put that over there. This is Garlic and the Vampire, which I actually did hear about from Kara, unlike that other book that I thought was recommended by her, but no, it came from somewhere else, and I just made that memory in my own mind. She did a standalone review on this, I think, and talked about how cute it was, and it is. Like, here's some illustrations from it, and like there's this cute witch, which, you know, I love them, and also anthropomorphized vegetables. More than just the garlic. Like, where is Carrot? There's Carrot. Isn't he freaking cute? And the relationships between the vegetables are adorable, and also the vampire, the whole vampire thing, and the whole trying to work at being courageous thing, because it's a garlic, an anthropomorphized garlic, that is sent to go after a vampire because the other vegetables think that the vampire will be scared by the garlic, or repulsed by the garlic and won't be able to hurt her. Somebody has to go investigate the vampire, right? The whole story is cute, and I love graphic novels in general, and it was just really good. And also very fallish with the colors and the vegetable thing and the vampire thing. So, ebooks. The first one that I was trying to read for the Indigathon was Abandon by Wanaka. I think it was set in Australia, and Wanaka is indigenous to Australia, if I'm not mixing that up with a different book. I got to 47%, and it is a werewolf romance type book, which I have liked in the past. I have also very much not liked in the past. You know, it could go a couple different directions. There's a cover in case I don't bother to look it up. I probably will. And I heard of this from the, there was a group on BookTube doing a indigenous romance readathon where it was one per month, and so I would just like bought a few of the books and was going to read them at my own pace, and then didn't read like 3 of them. So I finally got around to this one. The prose was kind of, there was a lot of drama, and there was some of that toxic alpha stuff, teenage drama. But anyway, I was trundling along until there came a moment the author needed to do a thing for drama with the family and decided to do it with blood types and just messed it up royally. Like, blood types are not complicated, okay? It doesn't take that much research to understand that there are only 8 types of blood that are determined by, that are like, determine whether you can donate to another person. It was about a blood transfusion, and like how this or that person didn't have a perfect match and just completely didn't know how blood transfusions works. This kid needed a blood transfusion, okay? And they were like, oh, we want to test family members to try to get something that matches. No, they give you O negative blood because they have a ton of it on tap, because 1, it's the most common type. O negative and O positive are the most common types, and O negative is the universal donor.
That means you can give it to anybody, and their blood will not be offended by the 2 types of markers that are in blood, which is the letter marker, the O, the A, the B, or the AB, and the negative or positive. You have a negative and positive version of each of those. That means there's only 8 types, okay? And they said that O positive, I think, was what the girl had, and they're like, oh, that's the rarest type. It's not. AB is the rarest type. O is the most common type, and they have it at the hospital ready to go, and they don't need to know your blood type right away, because O negative is a universal. And then they did this whole thing like, oh, only someone who is a direct relative, like a sibling or a parent, will have exact matching blood type. There's only 8 types. There's not like an exact match and a non-exact match. Either they have something that's going to affect your blood, or they don't. And yes, people who are directly related can have very different blood types if their parents had very different blood types. Like if one parent had AB positive and the other one had O negative, you can have any combination of blood in those kids. Just the smallest amount of research needed to be done to understand that you can't use blood types that way. You would have to use some other type of tissue, like you need a liver transplant or some kind of organ, or something else that has more specific markers, and you have to get somebody who's a more perfect match. Not so with blood. But you didn't even need to know that much to know there's only 8 types, and O is the most common type.
Anyway, I couldn't stand it. So, I decided I shouldn't read that book anymore. Then I started reading Winter Counts, which I found on someone's Instagram that I will link below. It was either Bears or Thors, and it is by David Heska Wandley Whedon. And I thought it looked real weird. Like, is that some kind of a vole or a mouse or some kind of weird? No, it's a frickin' buffalo that's been tilted sideways. And the buffalo are brought up a lot in this book because they were very important to the indigenous people who lived where the main characters live. I think they're Ojibwe, but I remember names badly. But this is a thriller type of a book. It's actually kind of has a lot of similarities to Firekeeper's Daughter. It's where an indigenous person gets roped into an investigation of drugs that are being sold on the reservation. But in this case, it is about a, what do you call that? An enforcer, a justice for hire person, and his nephew and how they get roped into it. You know, trigger warnings for drug use and violence. It starts out with a violent sequence, actually, because he is a enforcer type person. It's basically a lot about drug trafficking, but also about mental health problems and, you know, the reasons that people use drugs, because they feel really hopeless. And so it addresses a lot of those topics, and there's also a little bit of romance in there, and a lot of like investigating and tracing things down and private investigator type stuff. And that was really interesting. And like, I got endeared to the main character really quickly, which I guess if you give me an introductory sequence that is a guy beating up a sex offender, that's enough to make me like a person. A lot of times in like thriller stories, I don't like get super attached to the main characters, but that did it for me. And also generally, he has a very protective sort of person, and I really like that. That's one of the reasons I like the bodyguard trope. That one really sucked me in, and I finished it in 2 days, I think. So I really recommend that one, even if you don't usually like thrillers, because like there were enough like character-oriented elements and like small town life elements that I think you could like it even if thrillers aren't your genre, like they aren't mine. Oh, I also read The Beast of the Twisted Kingdom series. It's number 4, and I haven't read the other ones, but you can read them standalone. Apparently it's by Frost K, because I read it standalone and I enjoyed it, and it is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, and it was okay. It wasn't amazing, but the main character was established really well. The main lady character, the hero character, the Beast character, don't know that much about him actually, or who he really is outside of brooding really likes this character lady. Yeah, although he has actually been exposed to other women, so he has like options, and yet chose this specific person who was hanging out at his castle. So I kind of like that element, and he actually has a couple of friends outside of her, but I liked the lady's character a lot better, than just because we knew her more than his character. And yeah, there's like 30% of the book before we meet the hero that is all establishing her character and stuff that she's doing and her background, and that was all very entertaining, so I didn't mind not meeting him till then, but like, you definitely know her better. The romance part was kind of partially summarized. Like, it would show us some of them interacting, and then it would summarize, and then for a month they continued on doing this. And so like, it widens the time frame to make it make more sense that they fell in love, but also when you summarize and don't show enough of the romance, it's harder for the readers to invest in the romance. You know, it's just not as enjoyable when you don't get to actually see it happening. So yeah, if the author had made more cutesy moments or sweet moments, or just them growing together, actual moments instead of summarizing it, I think I would have enjoyed it more. But other than that, it was a good addition to my Beauty and the Beast retelling repertoire. And then the other thing that I've read since I talked to you last is The Lost Princess Returns by Jeffy Kennedy, and it was just another in the Uncharted Realms series that I've been reading for the last few months. And it was about a side character who actually has her own series that is a separate series that I haven't read, who had a traumatic past and is now coming back to kick the butts of all the people who traumatized her, and that's pretty cool. It is a novella, so it didn't take me very long to read that one. And that is all I have read so far. I have several more Indigathon reads that I want to get to, and hopefully I will be telling you about them right now. So, part 2. I am dog sitting again. This might be a slightly familiar background. I've only filmed exactly here once before. Here's some footage of the dog. This is Lux. He is my cousin and cousin-in-law's dog. He is a golden doodle, but his parents were black golden doodles, so that's why he's this color. He's kind of tuxedo.
got a white chin and a white in his little pimples. And he's having his toothbrush treat right now.
One of the dogs anyway. I still have the usual two, the Khaleesi, the big German Shepherd-ish dog, and the floofy black cat Asha, but you've seen them before. So, my favorite one of the month, I think. Yeah, my favorite one of the month was Healer of the Water Monster. This is a middle grade fantasy book, so like right up my alley, and I found it on another Indigathon recommendation post, and I'm really glad I did because my library doesn't have it, so I wouldn't have found it that way, and I for some reason just haven't seen anything about this book. It was just so good. Main character's name is Nathan. He has divorced parents and is kind of working through the trauma from that, and also his dad has a new girlfriend, which is, you know, always a bit awkward, and so he's spending the summer with his grandma so that he doesn't have to spend it with his dad and the new girlfriend, with the excuse being he's doing a science project that needs a farm to do the project, which is growing seeds that have been descended from other seeds. Oh, I know the name because I like love gardening, but it's not coming to me. Versus seeds that have been genetically modified. To an extent, all seeds have been genetically modified because they were bred to be more fruitful, but this is traditional, yes, Navajo/Diné seeds that have been like kept by traditional farmers, gardeners, versus ones that have been modified in a lab that are now sold by big companies. And most of that genetic modification, some was to be more fruitful, but a lot of the genetic modification that's copyrighted is actually to make the seeds, the corn, immune to weed killer, so that the farmers can indiscriminately spray weed killer on their, or slash herbicide, on their crops, and then it'll kill the weeds but not the plants they want to grow, which is great for mass production but is bad for the environment because the weed killer washes off the dirt and goes into the groundwater and all the other land around it, and is not really friendly to bugs either. And so, yeah, that's not specifically relevant, but like something that I find really interesting, and is one of the reasons that it's bad that we have corn farms right next to the Great Lakes, which I learned about from a indigenous creator on TikTok who lives by the Great Lakes and can't drink the groundwater because there's herbicides and pesticides, I believe, in it. And I will try to remember to link him below. He's got a lot of really great content. But anyway, back on topic. There's a science experiment about these seeds, and his grandma is much more keyed into the Diné traditions than his mom and his dad. He's like a little bit keyed into that stuff, but his grandma is much more traditional and like more practices the religion. And so when he is doing his experiment, his seeds go missing, and this leads him to encounter various, I'm pretty sure they're referred to as spirits, but they are like various mythological creatures, including like horned toads and the water monster, in the titular water monster. And all of the characters are just so cool. Like, you meet all of these people, spirits who are part of the religion and beliefs, and you get to learn like their background and what the legends are about them, as well as seeing them described in a middle grade friendly way that like And you know, they're like really interesting. And I just really enjoyed that. And I also really enjoyed, there's a big part of the story that is Uncle Jet, who is Nathan's uncle, another son of his grandma, who went to war and got PTSD and is also being followed around by a bad spirit who is like the spirit of some of the dead people who he killed in war. And that needs to be gotten rid of with a enemy way ceremony. It has a lot of the traits of, it basically says all the horrible things to Uncle Jet that people's brains say to them when they have PTSD and depression. And so reading that was kind of, well, it was very dark, and it was raw, I guess, and powerful, and very, very much what I have experienced with my own depression. I think that was really good. A bit, you know, could definitely be triggering for some people, but I think it was really cool that the author decided to talk about that in a middle grade book, because, you know, depression tends to start hitting people when they become teenagers. So like it would be good for kids to have a background knowledge of what that is before it happens. And anyway, I really liked that aspect, and I really liked Nathan's familial relationships that were like flawed, and you could see like recurring problems that people had, but like they didn't let those be excuses for treating people badly. Yeah, it involves a magical quest to help the water monster, and the water monster himself is really sweet and interesting, and I really enjoyed that. So I really recommend it. It was a lot of fun. Then I finished Heartberries, which I've been reading since the beginning of the month, but it took a long time because I could only read a little bit of it at a time, because I think from how it was told that a lot of the book was written while the author was in a mental health ward, was like an inpatient, because she had been in a really, really bad place. So it makes sense that it would be really dark. It was also kind of stressful because it had a lot to do with generational trauma and just trauma in general, and so reading about that was kind of hard. And also it was a lot about how the author had needs and desires in her life that like overpowered her ability to take care of herself, specifically the need to be loved with romantic love by a particular man who was toxic towards her, and who she became toxic towards because she had not been loved as a child. And you can read into that and like know from other sources that like the reason she wasn't parented well is because her mom was also traumatized, and like you can see that she's trying to do better by her own kids, and like she's gonna pass on some problems to her kids, but it does seem like her kids are getting a better experience than she did. And the timeline jumps around because she's like talking about her life at a certain period, and then she jumps back to explain where this stuff comes from, and to like she links things from different times. So it's a little bit confusing, but a really in-depth view of a traumatized life. And fortunately at the end, also about living despite that. So yeah, that was really difficult, but I think it's good that I read it. And then I just finished Bury My Heart at Chuck E. Cheese's, which is listed as a memoir, but like the first third maybe is kind of very memoir-ish and talks a lot about her family and stuff, but it's actually mostly comedy. Like even the stuff about her life and her family life is like told in a way that's meant to be dark humor, and most of that I didn't really understand the humor. Like, I get white people dark humor because the depression and stuff, but this was like from a very different perspective. But about halfway through, it got much more like there were little articles that were like only like 2 to 5 pages long that like seemed like they were from a blog, or had been from what I read in the back, had been published in like magazines and like periodical type stuff. And those I understood a lot better. Like, some of them I still didn't understand what the joke was exactly. Like, it was hyperbole, I could tell that, but it was like, but I didn't understand what exactly the truth underneath the hyperbole was. But then in the last quarter, they're all jokes about, they're all mocking and despairing about the 2016 election, etc. And that, what's it called, administration. And I understood all of those jokes. So yeah, the last quarter was much more like stuff I understood, and so it like went a lot faster. But yeah, I think it was really good to read humor from a different perspective, because if you're not from a certain community or have a certain experience, there's some like stuff you're never going to understand, and it's kind of good to know that like you don't have the same experience, and that you just have to take people's word for it sometimes. But also, in the parts that I do get, it's good to know that you have like these things in common. And I think the author is very good at satire. So that was cool. And I also read a board book, not in person, so I didn't appreciate the boardiness of it, but it was just a little bitty book that I found in my library. Has an e-catalog of diverse reads, and they have like featured this month is books by Indigenous authors. And so I found on there this board book called My Heart Fills with Happiness by Monique Gray Smith, and it's just a sweet little thing that is like things that make a child happy, but it is like a few specific things that are Indigenous things, specifically Indigenous people who live in North America, and all the illustrations are of Indigenous people. So like, it's just a nice thing for kids to be able to have that represents them, even in this like very small board book kind of way, that like they can see things that they do, things that they and their family do, and people who look like them in these illustrations. So that was really nice. I think that's everything. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!